and welcome to Erupt, the home for how businesses can scale and transform. Throughout this podcast, we aim to inspire and educate to help you and your business thrive. Across the course of our episodes, we'll be interviewing industry leaders to uncover some of the challenges across the world of work. We aim to give an insight into some of the fastest growing organisations across HR and technology. Please follow us on our journey to erupt and elevate your business. In today's episode, we reflect upon our Changemakers Women in Technology event in Berlin, which included a panel of leading women in industry from Taxfix, Wayfair, Homeday and Adjust. Our host explores topics such as the hiring processes for women and personality types that lead to being a successful leader.
My name is Oana Iordachescu. I currently lead technical recruitment for Wayfair, and I also co-lead inclusivity initiatives, so Wayfair-wide initiatives around underrepresented categories at Wayfair. I have some lovely people, panelists with me today, which I find inspiring and strong, but I also see them as pillars in the Berlin community and influencing probably a lot of the conversations that are happening in their environment, but also overall. So, welcome, ladies. I will let you individually introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natali Vlatko. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a senior software engineering manager here at Wayfair. I lead the open source team. So our team is responsible for the how Wayfair open sources anything. I am here based in Berlin. I've been at Wayfair for just about 5 years. And the team that I manage is completely remote, based in North America. And so they're funnily enough having their lunch break right now while I'm doing this event. And then I get to be online later on because what's great about my role is that I get to have a lot of flexible choices around my hours because open source is a truly global and async way of working. So I also am the co-chair of the special interest group for documentation for the Kubernetes project. Big open source project. There's a lot of us around, and I'm really, really excited to share some of my thoughts on these topics with you.
Thank you, Natali. I'm Anna. Happy to be here. I'm Director of Data and Analytics at Homeday. I joined Homeday just a couple of months ago, and before that, I spent several years in IT classified industry around Germany, and before that in Finland, before that in Russia. So quite so many years business background. Now enjoying my way in data. Had experience leading in the teams of different sizes, very diverse, very indiverse, different ages, genders, groups, preferences. So I'm very passionate about the topic of bias in general, not just the gender bias. And I'm excited about our conversation today.
Hi, I'm Birgit. I'm an engineering manager at Taxfix. And for the first time in my life, I have a team that has the majority of women in the team. So that's very, very, yeah, exactly. How did we do that? Still need to analyze that. However, I also made a very diverse experience throughout my career. I had, of course, lots of teams that had lots of men inside the teams, big and small, or also some small that grew rapidly fast. And I also was a software engineer by myself, of course, and had made lots of experience there as well. Also with quite mixed teams, and also again with male-dominated teams. And this all actually led to the points that I actually went into leadership. I wanted to create an impact there, and at the same time also writing and talking about women in tech. So this is the diversity that I'm providing for you. So I have lots of resources on my Medium blog post that you can check out on my LinkedIn page. And what I'm also doing is mentoring women and coaching companies for the women in tech topic.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Vicky. I'm working as engineering manager in a Just company only for 2 months. in Germany, I am a little bit more than 3 years. Before I lived in Israel, before I lived the rest of my life in Ukraine. I also started as an engineer, let's say in 1800 something, like many years ago. And I have, I would say, very diverse experience. I think that I tried all the roles in the software development, like an engineer, manager, product manager, delivery manager. Now I'm engineering manager. I don't know. And that's me. Actually, I'm happy to be here today with you.
A round of applause for everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you. I want to thank, before we move forward, to our friends at Annapurna for organizing this event and kicking somehow a series, what we'll hope we'll have around Berlin and all these beautiful organizations. So thank you to them. I'll start a bit. So I started recruitment for tech about 10 years ago in Romania. And I moved to Ireland around 7 years after, worked there for Facebook and a couple of other companies. Sheryl Sandberg was an inspiration for all of us, I guess, at some point. But back then, I had to work a lot on making the business case that we need diverse teams. Like I had to have years of conversation that this is important. I don't feel I have to have that now. I think we've moved past it. Hopefully we're not going back. So that's kind of my observation around the field at the moment. What's happened in your opinion in the past, since you entered to now? What's good about diversity topics, inclusion topics? What have you observed as key milestones or changes, if any?
Me first, I guess. Yeah, great question. I help to lead an employee resource group here at Wayfair called Gender Diversity in Tech. And what we are specifically focused on is actually increasing the diversity of genders that aren't on the binary, so non-binary folks, trans folks in tech. And so I have found that while we don't have to often make the argument anymore, there is still a focus on men and women means it's gender diverse, for example. And I really believe that including our non-binary peers and our trans peers is actually, it tells a better story, specifically in the tech world, about who actually makes up tech and who is making contributions, especially in open source. And I have a lot of trans colleagues who sometimes feel underrepresented. So I would say that while we don't have to have a lot of these conversations as a general starting point, getting a little bit more into the details of what it actually means to truly be diverse in a lot of different ways, and exploring that gender is beyond just men and women is still a little bit new. And so that's something that I'm trying to do in my position as a very privileged white woman, to be able to try and actually push that agenda for my peers specifically in this space.
I started my career back in not 1800, 2008. And I still remember my conversation with my first boss, white male, unsurprisingly, early 60s, where he told me openly that I can't get the salary increase that I wanted because I'm a woman and I just need to pay for myself. So if I were a man, you know, I would need to pay for myself and my family. I got that increase, okay? Like,
well done.
I convinced him. The issue is that he didn't even understand back in the days that something was wrong about the statement. I think we moved past that. And especially in Europe, you know, the conversations start happening. People are more aware that there is more to diversity, once again, than just gender, nationality, race, sexual orientation. But I think we're still in the very beginning of the journey. And depending on the culture and the company and the composition of that company and the business, I think the maturity can be very different.
So interesting. And yeah, I think that can be a bit of a, okay, never do this again, and try to facilitate that nobody experiences this in their career. And I think that's why you're also here, but it comes with a bit of baggage, I guess. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, very interesting.
So I started out actually as a graphic designer and then slowly switched to software engineering. And during that time, I, of course, was also a junior. I did not know how to do a Git command or like how to commit something and then open up a PR. I needed to learn that. And I learned this the hard way when my tech lead actually told me, well, you're just too stupid to do that. And this attitude actually has changed. This is like my bubble feeling, basically, where like companies increasingly don't have that expectation towards juniors, especially those who are women or like a minority. However, based on the experience that I have and recently have gotten, and also and the experience that my mentees also recently have gotten, there's also like a really mixed feeling about that. I mean, there are some stories that I say these are like super crazy. It actually needs to be reported to police. But those women don't do that because they fear these people. And if you like, I can tell you about my experiences. Were luckily better than those. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you will see that I have changed the jobs like very often recently. So I had done a lot of interviews with a lot of companies, and companies also applied to me. And what I want them to do for me is to show me that they are diverse, that they really are taking care of the diversity inside the company. And one of those stories that I have to share is like that is actually really interesting, and also like an example of those companies who are not sharing the same opinion that we have here, is like a CTO basically showing like taking a look at my CV, questioning it, and also questioning the diversity in general. And like this very, very much in the first minute. And when I realized that, I had the feeling of like, oh, let's waste that 1 hour for him, because like, yeah, literally,
Okay.
like let's do that.
Thank you.
What I can add here. So first of all, I can say that then I was studying in university. We had this percentage in my students group, if I'm not mistaken, like 25 men and 6 girls in the group. And the same percentage I observe till today. Another thing to mention, in my practice, I would say definitely I faced a few cases of sexism, if I can call it like that. But it never prevented me to succeed or to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And regarding the situation right now, I have friends and my co-workers, which are, let's say, younger, so a little bit next generation after me, and they just don't know what is it. Like, of course, not everybody, but this is the opinion that I have heard, that I don't know what is it, the sexism in working in IT, working in tech. And regarding, I don't know, diversity, I would say that for me, this segregation between women and men was never really be a problem. And for example, I have never been in a situation that my salary depends really on my sex or whatever.
Thank you for sharing. So quite a few things to celebrate. I'm taking the wins. I'm taking all the wins I can, to be honest, but a lot of work to be done there. Why we organize this session is also to focus a little bit more leadership, engineering, how those two marry, especially when we're all striving to build diverse teams. And the more in important position, decision-making position, role model position, I think the most relevant it is to get more talent in the organization that matches those wishes and expectations. How do you feel about representation in leadership? Does it matter? Does it not matter? Is it you do what you see? Is it important to have, to feel represented, want to see yourself represented in these leadership groups, in your experience so far?
Me?
Whoever, jump in.
Okay, I can go, but I don't fully understand what you mean by representation. Representing what?
If you see other women in leadership, is it important for you? Do you think it's important for other women in the industry to see their gender represented? Let's say, just thinking binary a bit.
I think, yes, it is important to see, but maybe more not for women which already achieve something in the industry, but more for juniors and even for students, even for school girls, because I think that still, especially here in Germany, by the way, this is the difference, because situation is not the same, let's say in Ukraine, in Israel, and in here. And still here, from what I see in Germany, this kind of a niche profession, not for women in general. So in this sense, yes, I think that this representation, it's, like an Angela Merkel example. So the same. So it's important to pass the message to young generation that this is a good job. So it's absolutely feasible to achieve some good results and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for opening the conversation. Any other thoughts on it? Is it important?
I think so, like very much important. So we're talking about role models, and as you said, it actually starts very early. If I tell a young girl that she cannot do mathematics, then we don't have any girls who are actually doing mathematics and showing other girls that they can do mathematics. And the same way also we have that in the leadership, where like literally women see, like if there's not a female representative in the leadership, then they see that they cannot like go into leadership themselves in that company. And we're also talking about imposter syndrome and fears and anxieties, like, women are holding themselves also back. So if they cannot even ask for this position, then it's still like, it's even more important that we actually have women in leadership, that we have women in tech leadership, so that they can see it's actually achievable.
I would like to add a bit complexity
Yes.
here. While I agree with Vicky and Birgit about importance, but we're speaking about quality and we're speaking about quantity. And I think both matter, because when I'm thinking of Angela Merkel, for instance, many successful leaders female leaders who made it, today it's rather a specific kind of character that makes it, right? And I would love, because women are not like, yeah, here's your gender, right? And I don't want to, I refuse to keep it binary, because women are very different. And I really wish that different kind of women would make it. And for this, yes, it is important for them to be there. It's just, my worst boss was a woman, and my best was a man. So while it is important, I think we need to focus about the quality of the female leadership as much as about the quantity as well.
For sure. So investing and really recognizing, as you say, I think the variety within the variety, right? I think you mentioned something around how do we support everybody in a way, right? But then we have a lot of the conversation around allyship. And are men good allies? Are women good allies to other women? I think this has been a big topic as well. And I've worked in Paris a couple of years ago. I was there to build an AI lab for an ad tech company. And when I joined, there were very few women in the organization, unfortunately, but we made the very purposeful objective to change that. And the allies that I had, comparing to the previous experiences, they were men, but very specific men who were fresh dads of girls. When they started having kids and they were girls, they're like, how can I help? I already see that my daughter is being put in a box that I don't even know if she fits in, she wants to be in, and I don't want this world around her. And I found that beautiful, and I think it's an energy that we can all take when we meet this type of people. What do you think about, supporting allyship? Is it important? Have you seen this working? What would be some advice for maybe people in the audience to become those that fresh dads of girls energy type?
It's a great question. I'm really interested in being seen by those same people as worthy of caring about the box that I'm in, even though I'm not their daughter, for example. I think it's really about if we peel back even the category of gender or any other underrepresented category in tech, treating folks like humans and how you want to be treated. Do you want to be put in that same box? And then you can add these different layers of underrepresentation that makes it harder and makes opportunities less frequent and makes you get talked over by other people and so on and so forth. I think I agree that energy is really great, but I really want to peel it back to say, actually, ordinary people in your life deserve that same recognition and reflection, as opposed to just finding it when you become a dad of a small child. So I think that's something that is also, though, again, it can be hard. Interestingly, as a note, I grew up in Australia. I'm Croatian originally, hence my name. And this same idea around daughter of girls came up with our former Prime Minister, who would empathize a lot with women, really using this kind of framing. And that bothered a lot of his colleagues, a lot of people in Parliament, because who are they if they're not his daughters or wife? Do they get the same treatment or recognition or possible respect? And so I think that energy is great, but I'm interested in figuring out how do we make that for everyone at that level. And I think that there is, that's a great way to start, but now we can kind of peel it back to be like, you know, considering that of your peers as well and other colleagues in that same fashion.
Amazing point.
I'm so with you on this. Like, I had to smile because actually the only man who managed to convince me, or the only person who managed to convince me that the women quotas in the business world, you know, in hiring makes sense, was the death of a young girl.
Mm-hmm.
And his argument was like, listen, it's not ideal. Ideally, we should treat all people equally, independent on such a parameters as gender. And I'm really looking forward to see this world. But to get there, maybe we need a bit of a push. And how to become an ally for women, I think, you know, it's a fantastic question. Just be human.
Just do it.
Just do it, like Nike, right? Like, I mean, treat people like you want to be treated.
I have made different experiences. I mean, I mentioned already that I was in very male-dominated environments, but now I'm very like a woman-dominated environment. But I was also in mixed environments, and these were like these were really different. Like when I was in the male-dominated environments, it was very, very much competitive. It was even so competitive that it was like really exhaustive for the men themselves. So much exhaustive that they like could not even go to vacation without thinking about like, hey, there might be something breaking down because like other people are not like good enough to do this. So they even told this to other men that they are not good enough. So this kind of level of like no trust at all. And I feel like women are fostering collaboration more and men are fostering competitiveness more, which is also good. Sometimes you also need that, but you need to kind of have a balance. And from the reports that I have read so far is that you have to have a balance of at least like 20% of men or women. And then you can create like a communication balance out of that, which will then create a much more like comfortable environment for both of them. And when we speak about allyship, I also have made the experience myself that I needed to have someone who would say, Birgit, you have a really good idea. We should do that. Because many times I actually have faced, and this is also what other women also are facing, And in the morning, I also have learned that Black male people are facing the same. So it's also minority. Like they are not taking serious. So they need allies, like another person saying, you have gotten a really great idea, we should do that. Because other than that, they will just face like a lot of like fronts basically that they cannot go through. There's lots of convincing that they would need to do, lots of conflicts that will be created, which is why we need allies.
I think Natali always speaks at Wayfair around sponsorship. Like, yes, we can mentor, we can have all the programs, but are we sponsoring people for their capabilities, their ideas? Are we opening doors? Even if they're not ready, just let them fall. It's fine, right? So I think it's really, really interesting observation. And it reminds me of you. And you want to jump in with, I think you have quite a lot of very varied experience in different countries, so probably different.
Yes, I don't know, maybe I'm still sticking to this, my position that I see the root cause of this, how to say, inequality, just in amount of men and women busy in the industry as a root cause. Another thing that I think that in general for women in tech or in IT, it takes just more efforts really to prove, especially in this manner environment, that you are worthy, your opinion matters, and so on. That I would admit, I agree. But I think that again, it's just a matter of time. So okay, maybe for you as for women, it's a bit more of effort, more of repetition. But eventually, if the environment in general is healthy and you are working in general with the cool guys and they're smart and they are just listening to you, eventually you will get to the point that they will respect you. And in spite of, are you working on engineering position, management position? So you have just to prove. But again, for me, it's not something specific for women. This is just for the human being. So you, if you get into some new team, in new environment, so you have to prove that you are worthy to be there, that you can bring a value, that you can come up with some fresh, good ideas, and so on. So it requires patience, maybe a little bit more than for men, maybe because if you are the only one woman in a men environment, maybe you are a little bit awkward for them for a while, but then they just get used to it, and that's it. So for me, it just takes a little more patience, which is, by the way, also the good trait for women to have more patience, I think. And again, if to compare, like I was before this conference, I was trying to prepare my speech a bit, and I was thinking that what's the difference really to have a patience, and to have a patience, you know, for achieve some results, because women in general, again, maybe this is just my subjective evaluation, but in general, I am really patient to achieve some results. So I'm doing something and I'm just waiting, and I know that it will be rewarded at the end.
Thank you very much for the reflection before and now. I think it's really important. But I picked on something that I personally feel so attached to. If your environment helps you, then you have a free path, you thrive, you find your support. I'm very curious, you've all been in different organizations and now you're in positions of leadership. What supported you from the environments you are in now or have been in the recent years? Like, what helped you from the places, the people you worked with, the organizations you've been a part of, that you feel, yes, it helped me. It really brought me the next step, if anything.
I can start. Impatience, actually, in my case, because I'm always longing for this trait, and I'm very jealous of people who have it. But I have to actively work on it, and I realize that in many situations, my own drive helped me. But I also had people who recognize me, who have seen me, and who have given me an opportunity to try something and be there for me. And for this, I will be forever grateful. Yeah, because those were usually my supervisors, but not only. I mean, you're having in every company unofficial leaders, someone people are listening to, influencers, as we would call them today, right? And if you have someone in the company who will sponsor you, who would guarantee that you get this Monday to speak up, of course, that helps a lot. But even if you don't, I actually believe you can do a lot, you know, just with more effort.
Like for my case, for many, many, many years, I really had to take everything in my own hands. So there was like literally only me being my sponsor. But with Taxfix, I'm not only having like an almost only female team, but also I have for the first time a woman as a boss. So that is a really huge difference. And I mean, also in a fresh team that I'm having right now, not everything works like the ideal case. So there are also some things that I need to navigate. And what I'm realizing here is that for the first time, there's actually someone like my boss who's trusting me in a specific thing that she says only I can do. And this is super nice because I didn't realize that before. She makes it actually like she says it to me, and I'm realizing it because of her, and this is really nice. So I think this is a really good experience, and I feel like every woman should experience that, like in every step of their career. And that energy I'm really bringing also back into the team. Like for example, I actually have like a very domain-driven team that's only front end, but I also see that some women want to do back end as well. So here's my sponsorship to them. I'm searching them like some projects for back end so that they can learn.
Yeah, I guess in my career, it was very similar to yours in the sense that I just went out there and did what I wanted, kind of, and definitely benefited from sponsorship along the way, which is why I'm such an advocate for that now. And on top of that, I think the other thing that really helped me in my career, which is part of my love-hate relationship with events like this, is actually having a network or a community where I can feel psychologically safe. That happens to maybe sometimes be all the same gender or sometimes be all the same nationality or something that I can go to ask what I think are dumb questions. And they're not going to be judged or taken advantage of or anything. And I can ask these questions in a psychologically safe space to help inform myself so that I can make the next good or maybe not so good decision. And that is really, really beneficial. And so I try and make sure that because I've benefited from those kind of communities and psychologically safe spaces, that I'm creating the same thing for others so that they can get that benefit. Because I've definitely worked for folks who have had to struggle to get to their position and role of varying genders, and they believe everyone else should struggle. And I don't believe in that philosophy. If I'm in a position of leadership, I want to help others get to that same position. And so I really put a lot of energy into that. And there are days where that energy is gone and I need to kind of go back to my safe group and space and ask some questions and be able to get back on my feet again. So having that support network where regardless of the makeup of it, you feel psychologically safe to be able to ask questions and then pursue the big things that you want to do career-wise. I think that's been a huge benefit for me and probably many other people here in the room too.
Shout out to ERGs.
Yes, two things for me, what definitely supported me. So first of all, I was lucky to have during my professional path very good managers, let's say both women and men. So I learned a lot and I'm still learning. And this is actually for me, maybe the most important thing in work, to have some role model, to have somebody to look at, to to evolve together, something like that. Another thing, in my case, I had a little kind of special twisted path. So I started, as I said, like I started as an engineer, but then in Ukraine, I made my way up to, I don't know, delivery manager, or that was even not engineering manager, more on administrative path, like a strategy, PowerPoint engineering and the budgeting and, you know, all that stuff. Eventually, then we decided to immigrate, and that was a decision not driven but professional change at all. It was just a personal decision. So we immigrated to Israel, and for me, it was the moment actually to rethink what I'm gonna do. How do I want to proceed with my career? So I decided to step back into engineering. And basically after that, I worked as a 4 probably years, even 5 years, as an engineer. And then I decided to step back into the management again. And that was a challenge for me, not because I'm a woman, but because I found, and it was a surprise for me, that on the market, there are certain stereotypes, like, for example, recruiters or I don't know, some hiring people. So they just filter you out just because of the fact that you don't have, let's say, solid, without breaks, management experience during past 3 years. And that's why I was filtered out by several companies. And for me, it was just a total surprise, because I said, okay, like I worked as an engineer because I wanted to understand better what I'm managing. I want to have a personal touch to what my people are doing. But before, I had 10 years of management experience or something like that. No, we have these restrictions, so it doesn't matter. So for us, you are just a junior. And what, coming back to the original question, like what helped me, like people who actually don't have such kind of stereotypes, not only this one, but another one, they actually trusted somehow and then listened to me, and they were able to recognize, as it is called, management potential or leadership potential in myself. So that was my example.
I so relate to that, exactly the same thing, even if I'm a recruiter, had the same back and forth. But so I heard a couple of things. Employee resource groups, very helpful. Also a bit of Snoop Dogg attitude. I want to thank me. I think this is important, right? Everybody worked really hard. And I think despite of the environment, you really made it through because you were having some specific ambitions. But I didn't really want to talk about this tonight, but I think it might be important because I know you're very passionate about. Do you think that having these people who have believed in you, who have given you a chance, who have really made a bet on potential, but also saw your performance as real performance and not necessarily dressing it up in something else, are those built, or can we teach them? And I'm asking this because a lot of organizations in the past 10 years or so have invested millions in unbiased training sessions, coaching for managers and leadership to learn how to be inclusive. What do you think about, like, can we teach people, or is it part of who they are and their education? What have you experienced? Sorry, that was a long question.
I think we're also talking about a little bit about change management and changing people's opinion, and that's actually a really tricky thing to do. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of convincing, and it's not only about the rational point, it's also about the emotional point. Like, what is the person actually feeling about that subject? Is it actually relevant for this person? Does this person actually need that? So this is like, yeah, from that point of view, we kind of need to tackle that too.
So rational versus emotional, how do we tackle that in an organizational environment? Okay, anybody else?
To answer your question, I think it can be taught, but I think the methods of teaching is what we need to actually address. No one cares about going to a unconscious bias training as part of your onboarding for your company. No one cares about this. Maybe some people do, but does that stick in your mind? Is that actually going to be actionable by you? Very unlikely. And I think we really, really need to look at how do we teach in a way that, very similarly to your example of I've become a father of a young girl, wow, I see it now. That, how do we teach that self-reflection in a way that will actually be like long lasting? And I think that is a huge area that is super untapped and we haven't discovered the best ways yet. Same at Wayfair. We do unbiased, unconscious bias training for sure, and we do a lot of different programs to help with this at the leadership level and then down. But at the same time, a lot of it requires practicing those things that you're learning, and no one, a lot of people get maybe afraid that they might do something wrong, or they may not do the things that are expected of them. And I think there needs to be this area of possible psychological safety and trust, knowing that hopefully the intent is good so that we can learn from these experiences of applying what we've learned. But the methods of teaching are still up for debate.
I would build up on that. And I think that the point of the puzzle that's missing is the system of incentives. I don't know, like, question to the audience. How many of you read the book called Leadership BS? No? Fantastic book. Can highly recommend it. It explores in the social, like, it's a social researcher who wrote it, and they're asking themselves a question: while we're draining billions of euros in the leadership education, why we can't see the results of that? Why employees are still unhappy? Why the tenure of the leaders is so short? And pretty much the conclusion he is coming to, spoiler alert if you're going to read this book, is that the system of teaching the thoughts, right, that a leader should be modest and authentic and like great listener, is absolutely not in line to the behaviors that are being incentivized to become a leader and to stay a leader. And this is the same with the biases, right? Like, we can say all we want, that yeah, it matters and it's great, and it can even become like hip at some point of time, till the moment when the guy or the lady on top would say, hey, listen, if this is not diverse, like your team is not performing because you are not ensuring this diversity, or you are being promoted despite of being, you know, I'm not going to use the bad words. So despite of that, you know, nothing is going to happen. So the right behaviors need to be incentivized, not just from the bottom up, but also from the top down. That's what I think.
Interesting perspective. So really going deep, not just what we want, but how do we actually build towards that? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this all connects together, that you really need to foster this behavior and also repeat it, this behavior that you want to foster inside this environment. And this is where it goes back to like classical change management, basically, or like even human psychology. Spoiler, one of my hobbies is human psychology. I'm not a scientist, I'm just a consumer. But also, like, you can also change your behavior, but you also need to do this, like, you really need to stick to this. Like, imagine you want to like do more sports or eat less sugar. This would be like the same like mechanics that you do, like you need to do this like really often. So which means, like, if you want to use the right words for like a woman, you don't use girls, you don't use guys, you just use women. Yeah, so this is something that you need to foster every day. And this actively, like most of the things that we're doing passively. So this is our, like what we are used to, which becomes our behavior. But if we want to change something in our behavior, we need to do this actively. So we're spending active energy into that. That's like, I mean, you can also speak about this physically. It's like our electrons running through our brain. This is energy that we are spending. We're doing this like a lot. So this needs to become passive, and then you have fostered it.
What can I add? I can say that personally, I need training because, okay, I'm originally Russian speaking. That means that I have to read what means diversity, what means equality, what means inclusiveness. And eventually, like what do people understand by the term biased and so on? Eventually, like personally, I came to the conclusion that it's a kind of a common sense, just we have a special terms for this common sense. And I would say that our tech industry, so it is really advanced because, for example, my husband, so he's a football player, and he's really far away from this kind of a mindset. And I don't want to go into details. So in our industry, I think it's okay. And I think that, to some reasonable extent, trainings also work. But I'm not a fan, to have this trend as a hysteric, like we had maybe 10 years or 20 or 15 years ago with the agile, like agile is a remedy for everything. This is a magic stick and everybody has to do agile and so on. Another thing, what I wanted to say, shit.
So we got the R rating.
It was something interesting.
We'll definitely need to do a panel with your husband now, just for comparison. I'm just saying. Okay, but we started this conversation with celebrating a couple of milestones in the past years in our experiences. But I think a lot of us are still quite annoyed and annoyed. I'll not use bad words because we're keep discussing about same things over and over again in some areas. So I'll give an example. Why do we still have pay gaps? Come on, somebody just kind of understand how to do the calculation. Why do we still talk about unconscious bias and behaviors that are not suitable in any environments, and even more in work environments? Is there anything that is like making your skin turn upside down because we still keep bringing it up? It's still a topic that we need to address and fix, if that's a good word.
I mean, if we're talking about the gender pay gap, then I guess it's a very specific topic because it's also something that we have been taught when we were girls, when we were boys. Yeah, so we have been taught as girls to be like more laid back. We should not like push forward. And like basically not really asking for the pay raise later. Like we didn't learn that behavior, which kind of like also results in these expectations that we have today, where we expect basically men to like literally ask for the pay raise, and we expect the women literally not to ask for the pay raise. We actually had that example here today also. So I think this is a very special case.
Anything else?
Yes.
Anna is searching. Which one do I want to pick? Okay.
No, I mean, there are many, but I think when you're describing the feeling, I'm having a very particular topic in mind, and it's absolutely not connected to what you just said, right? But what I have noticed is with all the topics of diversity, it's turning into a bit of this finger pointing. What can you do as a white male to help me in my career? I was like, point it to yourself. What can you do? Look in the mirror. And I feel that we as women don't do that often enough. Not holding ourselves accountable for our success, not thinking also what can we do. Yes, of course, support is giving us a head start, and it's fantastic. But this is what gets me really annoyed, when people are putting the blame on the outer world before they look at themselves.
I have a different point of view to that. And I think the reason that's hard to look at yourself is that you're existing in a system that is working against you. I'm going to say the big P word of patriarchy. This is actually built this way. It is very much existent in a way where, while I understand what you're trying to say, is that the idea of you should look at yourself to be able to hold yourself accountable, and I agree to a certain extent, but there are absolutely sometimes forces at play that no amount of accountability will help you. And so that is why we need to look at the problems in a systemic way to be able to try and break down those barriers, so that not that we reach equality, but that we reach equity. Because equality, this idea about equality for me personally, is the idea that everyone is equal, and that means your opportunities, where you start from, everything is equal. But actually, we know that in tech, for example, that's quite often not the case. There's a lot more opportunities for a certain dominant gender. There's a lot more pay for a certain dominant gender. And so what we want to reach is equity, which means that sometimes we need to get more, we need more opportunities, more resources to get to that same level, to have what we want to think about as equality. And so I think there are ways to hold yourself accountable in some areas, for sure, absolutely. But there are other ways where sometimes the system is kind of working against you, and when you have to figure out, hopefully with allies that I want to kind of bring down those barriers with you, how we get to a point where equity is possible, and not just having to kind of constantly work against a system that is sometimes built up against you.
Thank you. So I think there's so many things, right? But I agree with the systemic, and we look at Germany, we look at countries we're from, but there's so much variety where people actually start and where the industry and the topic is at the moment in each of these countries. And it's very interesting to observe. Anything that you would like to add, like anything that is, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, as always today, so I have always something to add, but it's not related to diversity, but just my 5 cents that what constantly irritating me still, you know, so I really expect organization to practice what they preach. So if they preach diversity, so I would like to see the proof of diversity. If they preach, I don't know, care about employees, so I want to see it. And this is just unfortunately still not the case, but this is wider question than just what we are discussing today.
Everybody's taking notes, right? Okay. We're gonna wrap up and give the opportunity for some questions and some refreshments. But before we do that, I'm curious if you would start again. If you would look at your younger self and you want to go into engineering, what would you tell yourself? What would you want your younger self make sure that they would do to get where you are or in a different place? Any advice?
I have. Okay, so because I was preparing for the conference, so yeah, I reflected and I decided what I would change. I would start working earlier because, as a matter of fact, I spent 6 years in a university. So I got my master's degree in computer science, and then I started working, and it was already too late. And I think, and this is also the trend and tendency that I see in the younger generation. So actually, you are able already to do really something useful and to jump into the work much earlier than 6 years. And all this conservative conditional education, like you have to finish school and then you have to finish university with the excellent diplomas. So nowadays, this is not absolutely, it's good, nice to have, but it's not necessary. So I think maybe I just started working earlier. Yeah.
And I think that's a message also to organizations like ours. Just give chances to internships, build apprenticeships, build part-time opportunities. I think this is really incentivizing people to actually do a little bit of both and get that practice. Thank you for sharing. Really important point.
Well, yeah, for me, I think I wouldn't I know that I wouldn't change anything, because every step that I have taken in my life, and like every drama that I have experienced and every good thing that I have experienced, is something where I take the energy from to like really understand where the people that I'm working with are right now. And this really helps me to become a better manager, and also to become like a better leader that they actually need.
I was actually thinking about this question for quite a long time. And probably the best advice for myself for my younger self I could come up with is chill, stop freaking out, you know, because this is only something that's coming up with the experience. The temporality of events, things that seem so important, deadlines, annoying colleagues, great bosses, bad bosses, all of these things that are just draining the energy that can be rather applied elsewhere. It's also a useful experience, but frankly, the most of the things I worried about were absolutely not worth it, looking backwards.
I think I want to take that answer. That's a great one. If I started again, well, I probably would have done my plan A career, which is archaeology, and this is plan B for me. So, I think something we hear a lot about generally in tech, I don't think it matters on the diversity spectrum, is this idea about you need to love what you do and have passion. And I would tell myself it's okay to just have a job and to work your hours and to go home. This idea about, you know, living to work. I want to work to live, and I think that that's something that as you're going into your career, you really kind of want to put your all into it. But I think it's okay to chill and just treat it like a job. And it doesn't mean that you're any less good at it. It doesn't mean you're any less interested in it or any less passionate. But having that balance is going to make you a better manager, leader, engineer, whatever it is that you're going to be.
I have an objection.
This is becoming an interview, okay? A job interview.
No, just not an objection, but I think that's still, I mean, I also was thinking about this balance, but I think that, you know, you have to, how to call it? So you have to work this critical mass of hours to really be confident in what you are doing. And I think that, again, like thinking about myself, I was over time and I was crazy about work. I was sacrificing, of course, family because of work, but to a certain extent, like that gave me this wisdom. Let's call it wisdom. And I don't know, like how it's possible to get it another way. Maybe if you are young, you have to a little bit put more efforts in order to have a revenge than you're old, you know, and wise.
Any questions for our lovely guests?
Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, it was very nice listening to you all. It gave me a lot to think about as well. And the question that I had is that in my past experiences, I've worked for companies that have diversity plans in place. But at a point, it feels a little bit like tokenizing people. And it's like, oh, I have this amount of people in the pipeline coming from underrepresented populations. And just because of that, we're doing a great thing. And that's also something that even bothers candidates themselves. And people don't want to feel like they are being taken into consideration for a process simply because they are female or they are non-binary or they're Black or, you know. So how can organizations like still implement diversity strategies without tokenizing people? Like, what would be your take or your advice to companies doing this kind of initiatives?
I have a lot of thoughts about this, and it's promote from within. We keep talking about needing to hire X leaders, X people in X categories. But if we have, you know, performance and calibration processes that help to promote from within in ways that are helping to raise the level of diversity in all different aspects that we have, then we have less of that issue. And so it doesn't completely solve the tokenization, but at the same time, it makes it less likely that these sometimes very, very good and well-intentioned kind of policies of we need to meet X criteria of hires, it makes that less problematic because that criteria is actually not then being based on because you don't have as many folks because you're promoting from within. At the same time, it's also hard being the first of any kind of underrepresented group. And I think that that's something where investing in how you care for people, how you promote people and so on internally makes it a bit harder to hire because people from underrepresented groups find a place that they're valued and they really like working and they've got everything that they need. And they're ignoring 5, 10 recruiter emails a day or so on. And so investing in those programs too goes hand in hand with a lot of that promotion aspect as well. So that, again, we don't have to have these huge numbers of diverse hires as it's often stated to fill a gap. But that's not perfect either. I agree that there's a lot of tokenization for sure, and it's a hard thing to solve.
I think it's complex because, for instance, as a woman, I really, really hate those diversity targets. I don't want to wake up in the morning and think, yeah, I was hired for this position because, you know, they were missing a person to this 40% they set for themselves. On the other hand side, these targets, they're needed as a strategy, as a direction to raise the awareness that the issue is still there. But if I had a company that would decide where to invest, I would invest in education to create the equal opportunities from the beginning on, because as Vicky was saying, we're still not having enough diversity on the very lowest levels. And then if you have this awareness from the top, hopefully at some point we will be in the same level of consideration for all of these groups.
I'm thinking about like, when is it tokenization and when is it not? Because when we also talk about like some numbers that we have like around 20% of women studying actually STEM, and then we actually have from then on only 16% working in STEM, and then take a look into your pipeline. How many women actually do you have? It's probably a single-digit number. So where is the rest of the 16%? And there are like some assumptions out of those reports. Some of them you actually can read from LinkedIn, that women, for example, apply less, like they apply to not so many companies, whereas men actually spread their CV. So this could be one of the reasons why you have like the feeling that there are like the perception that there are less women in the market, even though there should be 16%. Based on some other reports that you can find on the internet. So which means like, what can you do? Where can you find these women? Sometimes you even need to be very active about that, like literally like writing them and kind of begging them to apply to you, but generally making yourself visible that you're searching for them. And then of course, it feels like tokenism, especially when you cannot offer something for the diversity, like as we speak, like you should not only preach diversity, you should also do diversity. And this was basically for me the difference of being a tokenized woman, where like companies told me, yeah, we want to have women in the company, and then you're treated as like a second-class citizen. Whereas in other companies, you're really treated as like a valuable person. So this is for me, like for me personally, the difference between tokenization and really being valued, even if if people would actively come to me.
Nice insights. Thank you. I have one more question. I think I had one. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for the interesting panel. I like the diversity of thought. There was actually a point, I think, Birgit, you made it, that you choose your employer if you're looking for a new job also based on how they handle diversity. How do you evaluate that?
That's an interesting question. I actually have like a large blog post about that.
Link here.
Link there. You can also find it on our LinkedIn page with a friend link of Medium. So it's not only a result of thoughts that I have, it's also a result of like many women, men, and also companies that spend their thoughts on that. And what I did, I mean, for example, Taxfix already has like a quite extensive application process. It's like 4 or 5 steps, but I made it even longer because I wanted to have these extra sessions to ask all of these questions that I have. And I wanted to ask all of these questions to like even the same questions to multiple people. So I want to ask it to the talent acquisition manager. I want to ask this to my possible future manager, and also to like people that have nothing to do with me in the future, but then also like those like the technical interviews as well. So with that in mind, I get like a lot of different answers, or in Taxfix case, actually like a really persistent, consistent answer. And this is actually for me a sign that this company is really doing something for diversity. I mean, I had it already a lot of times where like HR manager or like talent acquisition manager had the perfect sales pitch, but then like the normal software engineer did not know anything about that. So this is a really good sign of like, hey, this company might not be a good place for diversity.
Thank you for that. Nice. And I'm sure you also have your grid and scoring for I would have.
I actually also placed some numbers here and there. Yeah.
I can see that. Questions?
So thank you everyone for sharing your amazing stories. It's really interesting. My question is mainly on unconscious bias. So the two things. One is the teenagers to come up with a strategy to break the unconscious bias. And again, even if we hire people as per the statistic, the average human brain fully matured after 25 years or so. Now, we do recruit people, college fresh out who are 21, 22. That's the best time to break the unconscious bias. So in that way, what are the two strategies that you think of breaking unconscious bias for teenagers who are still in the colleges and the universities, and the people who are in the corporates to break the unconscious bias?
So now you are a science psychologist. Bring that. Yeah, if any insights, for sure.
I think the first thing that we need to address is that the idea of unconscious bias isn't always bad. A bias exists because the lizard brain wants to survive, right? I am not a psychologist, so I have no idea if that's actually fully correct, but this is my thinking. And so this idea of unconscious bias is at the very base level, these things that we do to help us survive. And sometimes they can be good, but in the context of what we're discussing, it's often the bad unconscious bias that we actually want to address and target. And so I think having that differentiation is the first way to start in either group that you've mentioned to actually start challenging those things. Because as an example, you can have unconscious bias in areas where it doesn't affect anyone in a negative way versus the opposite of that. And so I think, and this is funnily enough something I learned at Wayfair. And so these kinds of ideas around what is good bias and what is bad helps us to come a little bit more to terms and like address the bad unconscious bias that we have, so that we don't feel like these evil, horrible people that are only doing bad things. And that kind of self-awareness specifically, maybe for the group that you're mentioning that is already working and maybe in their ways is a good tactic, but could work for both folks in college and then folks who are working. But understanding that difference, that it's not always bad, but then being able to address, okay, what unconscious bias am I practicing that is not good and not productive, not good at all? And how can I help address that? As an example for myself, I have a few colleagues who are non-binary and I sometimes misgender them, and I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. And that's a bias I have because I've learned for a long time that there's two genders, and that's not true. So constantly making sure that I'm not demonizing myself, and I'm just trying to also learn and engage and do the right thing, and just being very open and vulnerable to doing that has helped me personally.
I think the methods are the same. The length of the education is different. Our brains like coherent stories, and they will build them based on the examples of what we see in front of our eyes. So what is usually the most effective way of learning is practice. So being surrounded by diversity in college and being exposed to those perspectives definitely gives you a head start. But diversity doesn't equal diversity, right? So when we're building our first social connections, at school, in the universities, in colleges, and usually in the older age, we keep on, we tend to maintain them. So the diverse is the initial surrounding, the easier it will be. However, if you didn't have this opportunity, if you grew up in the environment which was not diverse, it doesn't mean you can't learn it. I mean, we talked about it today, right? You can still be doing that. And the best way to do it is by examples. We had today, actually, one of my team members is here today, but another one who is a part of diversity task force at Homeday is not. And we just had this training today. And I will never forget the face of my male colleague when he has heard the stories of a couple of women who were exposed to sexual harassment at work in Europe, because it's not because he's a bad guy, he just never experienced that, he's just never seen it. And now he's going to remember because he knows me, like he knows the other person, it makes the shared stories, and this is what our brain remembers.
Continuous learning, that's conclusion. Thank you so much.
This podcast was brought to you by Annapurna Erupt. If you enjoyed this episode, please visit our Go Erupt website to get involved in our regular podcasts, video footage, and live events throughout the year. Thank you for listening.